You're good to start.
Okay, let's call the meeting of the Operations and Finance Committee of the Board of Education, Guilford Board of Education to order. The first order of business is the review of the minutes of March 8th. Does anybody have any comments with respect to these minutes?
Yes, I do. Page 2, halfway down, starts off Mr. Schmidt noted. If you go to the second sentence, it says some athletes do prefer. It should be do not prefer.
That is correct. I agree with that. Also on that particular line over where it says recommendation of should be coated chrome rubber.
That's an important correction. Thank you.
Yep.
And in the next paragraph, Mr. Maynard stated, the next line has 9 fields with acrylic coated chrome rubber. Are there any other corrections proposed for the minutes of March 8th? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve these minutes.
So moved, Ted.
Okay, and a second from Mr. Della Ventura.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, let's go to item 3, which is the monthly review. And our reviewer this month is Dr. Hurst.
Yes.
Mr. Sands, before we move on, do you want to note the Standing Building Committee minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're correct. I should have done that. Did anybody have any comments on the Standing Building Committee minutes? Okay. Let the record show there were no comments.
Thank you.
All right. Dr. Hurst, are you going to tell us what happened financially?
Sure. Well, on the basic financial summary, there are a few things that we could look at. The excess cost grant, which was $993,830. We originally requested from that federal support, which goes through the state, we requested approximately $1 million, and we received $985,753, which is about 83.5% of our request, as we requested over $1 million. We expected 69%, so that what we got was far beyond what we budgeted for. We don't expect necessarily that we'll get the equivalent proportion in the second round, so that this may end up evening out. At the moment, it looks good, but we can't count the dollars before they hatch. Under tuition, the tuition line says that we've expended a lower amount. This is partly because our costs are lower, and that the payment was made at a higher rate. That is, we got a higher rate of reimbursement than we originally anticipated. So that just flows. Under capital, that capital expense is lower, but that, as we'll see under the warrants, major new capital was for a new maintenance vehicle and some tech equipment, such as Chromebooks. And this is part of our lease And, but that's coming in lower than we had anticipated. And under the COVID expenses, which are kept very, very, very separate line items from our budget, from ESSER, which is the elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds. We expected about $1.2 million, and we now requested an additional $520,000 from what is called Esther II. Now, as I understand it, what happens is we have to actually document our actual expenses before we reimburse for the dollars. And the dollars that we're seeing here are given to us under our first request. We're still expecting our second request. Those are the things that sort of were outstanding that I could pick out under the summary of the financial reports that Linda gave us. Under warrants, at least under the page headings that I've got, on page 3, under the Connecticut, what is labeled CIRMA, which is the Connecticut Interlock Risk Management Association. We paid $107,000 for workman's compensation, and that was the 4th of quarterly payments that we made. And we paid an additional $45,000 for our auto and property insurance. So those are big payments that stand out among the warrants. On page 5, we see a payment made to Gengris for $50,623. That was actually for the maintenance vehicle that we leased this year.
Can I ask a question? If we lease that vehicle, why are we paying for it? Why isn't the leasing company paying for it?
We, as I understand it, and if you can back me up, we paid for that in advance, and then that is, we leased it in advance, and then we had to pay it back. Is that the way it worked, Ashley?
It's more of a, you pay for it and then we get reimbursed for the money later on.
So this is like the technology lease?
Yes, it's part of the technology lease.
We're essentially just transferring the cost of that truck into the lease itself. So we're not leasing from the actual auto company. We're putting the lease underneath our tech lease budget. Does that make sense?
It was bundled into and became part of essentially the tech lease. So we did it
Right.
with the same firm.
Okay, all right. Because I did have a question about that on the warrants too. All right, go ahead, Dr.
Page 9, I think, under treasurer, a big item, $844,000 was paid to the town of Guilford. That's the fund we jointly share to pay our medical cost accounts. That's a monthly payment. So it's a normal payment, but it's a large one. It stands out in the warrants. That's all I have to point out on the warrants.
Are there other questions with respect to the financials or the warrants? I had 2 questions with respect to the warrants, Ashley. The first was on page 5, environmental tank technology, AWC and Jones fuel storage files, $4,000. What is that?
So I have in my notes here, it was for closure report files.
It's from the removal of the old fuel storage tank that was removed multiple years ago. We never got a final closure report, and the DEP is requiring us to do one at this point in time, even though it's after the fact.
Okay, good, thank you. And on page 7, We seem to have a new vendor for our special ed, New Canaan Mounted Troop, Inc. 1 tuition, 7 lessons, $2,090. What is that?
Yep, Mr. Sands, that is part of a student special education programming. We are creating a program on that student's behalf, and that is one of the service providers. Essentially, horse therapy or equine therapy is a service that some of our students with autism do receive.
Oh, okay. All right. Any other questions or comments with respect to the financials or the warrants?
Yeah, this one caught my eye just because of the vendor's name. It was Pane in the Glass. And it really just brought to attention that we have a greenhouse. And I wasn't sure exactly where the greenhouse was. What school is that at?
So the work on that greenhouse is actually the old science wing portion where we still do the maintenance on that building. So we do have a greenhouse in the new high school, which is kind of tucked in let's say the back of the building, south side, second floor. But the work on these actual glass panels was at 595 or the old science wing.
Fantastic name.
Can we give an award? Can we give an award for?
Well, okay. Anything else on that? All right. Let's move to item 4, the COVID spending update. Who's going to cover that?
I'm going to take that, Mr. Sands. So the board has been asking for some time if we could give a projection. In fact, both this board and the Board of Finance have been asking for some time for us to provide a projection about the end of this budget year and the impact both of COVID expenses and some of those grant offsets that Dr. Hirsch has referenced already tonight. In broad terms, here is what we are projecting for the end of this fiscal year. And we will be joining the Board of Finance at their next 3 regular meetings to first provide this update and then follow through as we close out this fiscal year. We all remember that the pandemic hit as we were closing and finalizing our budget for this current school year. We closed schools and then we reopened schools under this pandemic with a budget that had been prepared before any of these circumstances played themselves out. We have carefully tracked and kept separate any of our expenses related to the pandemic that were not identified, that were unbudgeted in this budget moving forward. And we estimate that as the time, when we come to the end of the school year, we will have expended somewhere slightly over $2 million on unanticipated, unbudgeted COVID expenses. This is everything from PPE and plexiglass dividers, tents to provide additional outdoor space, and most importantly, most significantly, additional staffing, adding monitors to the school buses, adding additional custodial staff during the school day, additional health monitors to support the school nurses, lunch aides, lunch monitors, building substitutes, and in some cases, certified teachers to help bring down class sizes to a manageable size. So we have overexpended in the amount of approximately $2 million as a result of the COVID circumstances, the pandemic. At the same time, the budget that we prepared was impacted in other ways by the pandemic in the restriction of activities or opportunities that could have been provided that in fact have reduced our spending. So because of reduced travel, because of reduced field trips, because of reduced club and athletic opportunities, in addition to some other unrelated and unanticipated savings in areas like tuition. At the same time, we are projecting that we will have underspent our regular approved base budget by approximately $1 million. So those two would net out and leave us with a shortfall of $1 million in this school year. When you look at the monies that we will be receiving, first from the CARES Act, then from ESSER, and then from ESSER II, we will be bringing in approximately, all totaled up, $695,000 in those areas. We are therefore projecting a shortfall in this budget year of approximately $305,000 that will require us to go to the Board of Finance and request a special appropriation. We intend to give them this update at their next meeting scheduled later this month. We will update them. We'll continue to monitor these numbers, these projections, and we will update them at their May meeting. And then in their June meeting, when we have closer to a final figure, we will then be able to request any special appropriation that we will need in order to close our books and balance out this fiscal year. It's worth reminding the Board of Education, and I will certainly remind the Board of Finance as well. When we closed the school year last year, we returned approximately $335,000 unspent at the end of last year. We will be requesting somewhere in the ballpark of $305,000 this year to be able to close these books successfully. We view this as very much good news. We did not know what to anticipate from these grants when we went into this year. We knew that we had the support of our community and the Board of Finance, and essentially knew that we were going to do whatever it took to provide a safe and healthy environment in our schools for our students. We did that, and the fact that we will need to request slightly less than we returned unspent last year to be able to finish this year successfully, again, we view as good news. These numbers will change. You know that this is a projection. In the next 3 months, we expect there to be some movement within these numbers, but we believe these give us a good idea of the scope that will be. And again, I view it as tremendously good news. So we'll be bringing this to the Board of Finance. Wanted to share it all with all of you first, and we will keep monitoring and updating you through the rest of this school year as well.
Could you explain to us why, with all these different grants that were supposedly made available to us, we still end up with this big a shortfall?
So the grants that came out, the grants have been released at the federal level and then through the states. The states have then essentially modeled the Title I formula for the distribution of these grants. And so as those monies filter their way down, these are based on the allocations that we're receiving of these federal grants. There is more money yet to come. Depending on what we refer to it as, it is sometimes called the American Recovery Act. It is sometimes referred to as ESSER III. There is another $1.2 million projected to come to us in Guilford Public Schools that would need to be spent from the close of this school year through school year 2023 that would continue to support moving out of the pandemic, making sure that we're meeting students' learning needs, making sure that we're supporting their social, emotional, mental health needs as we come out of this pandemic. Those are additional dollars coming forward. It's just our allocation, Mr. Sands, and I have to tell you, I'm really pleased. I was worried that the delta was going to be far larger than $300,000. Again, I view this as very much good news that the delta is only $300,000.
Well, as you look at this, you know, there's some districts that have been totally remote and haven't, in my view, haven't spent very much money on this. Are you saying that because it's allocated the way the Title I funds are allocated, that those districts would end up with a big surplus this year, and we're ending up with a deficit of $300,000?
No, I don't believe anyone's going to be left with a surplus. Districts need to report how their monies are being allocated, how those monies are being spent, and the state is monitoring those expenditures. We are required to report out to the state exactly how we intend to allocate these dollars, and they must fall within certain approved categories. So there are certainly districts that received larger allocations, and that would have been based on their size. It would have been based on their community community's ability to pay, all of the other calculations that go into Title I. But nobody will be receiving buckets of money that will be left in surplus. If they don't account for those expenditures, and if they don't plan to expend those dollars in approved areas, then I don't believe they'll receive their full allocation. We will ensure that we receive our full allocation. Most of the dollars that are coming to us from CARES, ESSER, and ESSER II are all being focused on those expenditures that we have already incurred. And as I've mentioned, they've mostly been around safety, health, mental, physical wellness, and the ability to maintain consistency of programming. The monies coming in will be used forward-looking to look at moving through and then out of this pandemic. And we'll have a report for you on the planned spending of those dollars at some point in the future.
Any other questions on this rather important point?
I was just going to note that having sat through several Board of Finance meetings over the last 4 or 5 months, that not only has Linda explained, but also Mary Jane on the town side has explained that, you know, there have been limits, right? That as there are parameters, as Dr. Freeman is suggesting, there are parameters around what can be reimbursed and what can't be. And we have some COVID expenses that have fallen on our plates, as has the town, that simply have not fallen within those parameters. But I am quite thrilled with this number, quite frankly, and particularly you know, September, October, November, when Dr. Freeman, you and your staff were doing what they needed to do to keep our students safe. You know, this could have been a lot higher ask at this point. So this is really quite good news, I think.
When will we know about ESSER III?
So again, we anticipate that the dollar amount is going to be in the ballpark of $1.2 million, probably very close to that figure. We have not even received the application details for that at this time. I couldn't say exactly what that timeline is looking like right now. Actually, I don't think there's anything more specific on ESSER III at this point, is there?
I am not positive about that, but I can check with Linda and get back to you all.
Well, the reason I asked, if we knew what it was going to be before the end of our fiscal year, would some of that offset the $300,000 we're anticipating now as a deficit?
We're not thinking that way. We're looking, one of the broad distinctions is that ESSER 1 and 2, especially in districts our size, in the amounts that we're receiving, are being viewed as filling the hole that we created, and ESSER 3 is very much forward looking. And again, I don't know that I would actually rush to do that. I don't want to speak for the Board of Finance. I think the Board of Finance will be relieved with a $300,000 special appropriation. I would rather sort of hold on to those dollars moving forward and make sure that we are, you know, really investing those in moving forward rather than taking 300 off of there to help close this gap this year. And I'll share that with the Board of Finance. I don't mind being candid and transparent about that, but those are going to be important dollars for us as we move forward.
Any other comments? Okay, well, that's been very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's turn to the dining services update.
Good evening, everyone. So I want to start off tonight by informing you all that I will be moving on to another opportunity and finishing my time here in Guilford this April. This is very bittersweet for me. Ted, I see the thumbs down. I've had a really amazing experience here in Guilford, and I've met and built so many wonderful relationships with my staff members, coworkers, community members, and I'm just very thankful for my time here. And I appreciate so much all of the support and encouragement that everyone has given and shown me throughout the almost 7 years, which I can't believe it's already been 7 years. It feels like it's been a lot less. We've accomplished a lot together. I just have to say that. And I am just so thankful and very grateful. And I care very much for my department, this district, the community. I totally drank the green Kool-Aid. It happened, I'm not gonna lie. But I just want to say thank you. And this will be my last board meeting, which is really sad. I do have a food service update too, aside from that update.
But before I allow Erica to go on and share that, I know I don't need to say this to the operations committee, but I do want to say this in public. Erica has changed the food service program here in the Guilford Public Schools. It is not the same program that she took on when she came here. I can't say enough how much we appreciate the work that she has done in this system for our schools, for our students through the food service program. Those of you who were on the operations committee those 7 or 8 years ago know that we struggled with this program. Quality, excitement, enthusiasm from the student body, but also on the financial end. And Erica viewed both of those as challenges and addressed both of them successfully. I really, want to thank her for the past 7 years. I also want to point out to the board that she will be staying on, has agreed to stay on through April, and that means a lot. This is a good opportunity for Erica. I would never hold back talent, but really appreciate that she's going to help us transition through and stay on our feet as we move through. We're going to miss her. We can't thank her enough, Erica. We really appreciate everything that you have done and will do for us over the next few weeks.
So
Thank you very much.
Don't keep us in suspense. What's your new opportunity?
I am going to Cheshire Public Schools. Sorry. Since you asked, I can't not answer your question, Ted. I'm sorry.
Erica, I just want to say thank you as well. As someone who has been on the board as long as you have been employed in Guilford Public Schools, I recognize everything Dr. Freeman just said, and have experienced it as you have worked so hard to move the dining services forward. And it is, you are also just a wonderful person to interact with and work with. So it has been my pleasure as well to have that opportunity. And I thank you for everything you've done, and I wish you the best.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And now to the important stuff. So we do have our 10 and 12 days of food coming up on Wednesday. So I'm really excited about the meal kit we're giving out this week too. I think parents and the kids are going to love it. We're doing a large cheese pizza, grilled cheese, carrots, corn, broccoli, and we're giving a lot of fresh vegetables, which is a lot. I've gotten a lot of parent reach out about different things that we're offering and things that we've had. So with this larger meal kit, I wanted to make sure they're going to get a bag of clementines, fresh bunch of bananas, strawberries, and fresh squeezed orange juice from Concentrate. I'm not making the girls and the staff squeeze oranges. I'm not that mean in the last month. That would be terrible. But I'm very hopeful that we'll have a really good turnout, as much as we did in Christmas, which will be a very fun amount of time. And then that's all I really have about that going on. One quick note, as I know you were all talking about relief and funding, and one thing to note a lot for the food service departments is that we've been making a really strong case. A lot of the American Rescue Plan and the one you're just previously speaking about, they don't actually address any of the food service losses or what we've incurred. And the USDA actually just sent out about a few weeks ago, they sent out a new funding formula. And for a district such as Guilford and ours, it doesn't provide us with any of the funding because it's looking at our claim reimbursement from 2018 versus 2019. So I've met with a lot of different congresspeople and senators and a lot of their teams, and we're advocating strongly that food service receives some funding for all of the pandemic service that we've done. Because as much as everything we're doing now is helpful, it doesn't really get us out of the financial difficulties that we're going through. And the free meals that we're serving currently have been extended until September. And we are very strongly thinking that in April, they're most likely going to extend them out through next school year as well. So you could be most likely facing and having all of these, the free meals, which is a blessing and a curse all in itself.
SDE is currently working on that question. It's been asked by food service directors. It's been asked by business directors. It's been asked by superintendents, whether or not any of those grants funds can be used to offset food service losses. And at this point, we still do not have an answer.
Yeah, it's the unanswered question. No one wants to talk about food service. It's always true.
Regardless of how it
But-
gets answered, it won't increase our amount. So the answer
Yeah.
will be whether or not we may use any of those 1.2 million to offset these losses. But either way, that amount is not going to increase based on that answer.
No, we're looking for additional funding from the USDA through the Child Nutrition Reauthorization and the next set of funding for next year. So it's not anything from what you currently have. We're reaching out and trying to advocate for more money later on.
So even from Cheshire, you can
Sorry.
still help us, Erica. Keep advocating for that.
I feel like I promised I will. And I just want to say thank you all again. You're all wonderful, and I'm so grateful. And I will definitely miss these Monday night meetings.
Mr. Sands, may I say one other thing, which I just want to thank Erica for. This has been obviously a pretty remarkable year, or remarkable March to as we head into April. I also just want to thank you for the energy that was put into the provision of meals to students and families who were not in the schools, and the energy that went into that, and what was required to move your staff around, et cetera. No, it's an important thing that happened in this district in the past year. And I just want to add that to my list of things that I appreciate that you have done. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
So we didn't have any financials for the dining services this month, but Linda has told me that we'll have 2 months for our next meeting. For next
Okay.
month.
All right, good. Okay. I assume, Dr. Freeman, that we are out looking for a replacement.
Mr. Bowden and Mrs. Trudeau have already started work on that, and Erica is helping us to identify an interim, if not a full-time permanent replacement. But yes, we've already started that process.
Good. Okay. All right, any other questions of Erica? It's your last chance to question her. Well, thank you very much for all your hard work. I was on the committee that hired you. We had a very good feeling about you at that time, and it turns out that we were more than right. And you've done amazing things here, and we wish you well going forward.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. I'm very appreciative and grateful to everyone.
Okay. All right. How about tuition?
Mr. Scanziano is here tonight to speak to that.
Absolutely. I'm happy to tackle that, Mr. Sands. I will make this very brief for you all. There have been no changes in out-of-district enrollment. Our tuition continues to trend under budget in the amount of approximately $253,000. And so Linda did ask me to mention that excess cost, as Dr. Hirsch and Dr. Freeman previously mentioned, is anticipated in May, and we will have better, allocation or knowledge of what our allocation will be within the third or fourth week of May.
From looking at the warrants, it seems like there's been a fair amount of turnover of the schools we're using. Is that because of the COVID or what?
So, Mr. Sands, it's twofold actually. One turnaround was due to a school closing in June of last year due to COVID that resulted in different placements for the students who were placed there. And the other is the effort to bring students back to district as much as we possibly can, and when it is appropriate to do so. And so there is some change in, the students that we have brought back or done creative programming with.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Scaziano? Okay, let's talk about the health insurance report. We all waited, we've been waiting for the shoe to drop, and I guess the shoe has dropped with almost a 50% increase in claims. But we shouldn't be surprised. We've known this was coming, and I wouldn't be at all surprised to see that next month was at the same level, but we'll see. Ashley, do you have any insights here?
So claims in February have increased as we predicted last month due to the issues with Anthem having with their processing claims during their conversion to a new system. The average of the 2 months, January and February, of claims is in line with prior months. And the average for the January and February are $790,000. The catastrophic claims, there was an error in last month. January should be $367,719. And the total claims covered by stop loss insurance is $442,079. The projected fund balance at June 20th, 2021 is about 7.2 million.
Still a very favorable situation. Any questions with respect to the insurance situation? Okay. Cliff, I have a feeling you have a few things to report.
Yeah, quick laundry list, actually. Seems to be getting longer and longer. Starting at Melissa Jones, one that we will not see next month is the HVAC project. That is completed and being closed out. We hope to make or approve final payment at tomorrow's Standing Building Committee meeting. So that's great news on that project. The Melissa Jones window and doors project, that was awarded to Accurate Doors and Windows. So we have been interacting with them. We've already gotten the signed contracts and they're working on submittals. So that project is moving forward for the summer. Moving on to the elevator project at Melissa Jones, that is presently out to bid and the bids are due on this Thursday. So we hope to get a good turnout. We had quite a few people there for the walkthrough. So hopefully get 5 or 6 close competitive bids. So that's great news on that there. The Melissa Jones doors and locks project, the security project, we have completed all the classroom doors at Melissa Jones. So that project will be closed out for next month as well. However, the Guilford Lakes doors and locks have not been done yet. That's the second school in line. We do have all the hardware and all the doors, and that project's scheduled to hopefully be completed next week during April break. So that's the big push for the maintenance department for next week. The Guilford Lakes and Cox HVAC projects, both of those are going to hopefully be approved to go to bid as of tomorrow at the Standing Building Committee meeting. So if we can get approval then, we will probably have them out on the street probably next week by the time we finish up the small pieces we have to put together. So we're moving along nicely on that. So hopefully we have some good bidders for that. The Baldwin HVAC project continues. We're really down to just 2 pieces that are left on that project, the controls work and the graphics, along with that ERV I mentioned, I think last month, which is a fresh air unit that has to be placed on the roof. So again, we're waiting for the warmer, drier weather. It looks like we're getting a little bit now, so hopefully we can get heavy equipment. It's a large crane that will have to go behind the school to get that dropped up top. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that we can get that done and get this project closed out before we start on our next ventures at Lakes and Cox. The only energy performance contract piece we have open is the Melissa Jones solar project. And again, with this nicer weather, they're trying to get crews together to start the installation of those up on the roof. So I was told it's going to be a relatively quick install, a few days to a week to complete that project. So I did see some nice days coming along. So hopefully it gets completed sooner than later. Moving on to the Guilford High School Stadium Field. As you know, that's still out to bid. We had a good turnout. I think there's probably close to 15 companies that were at the walkthrough or have requested plans. So we'll see how those numbers come in on that due date there. And then the last piece that I have for you tonight is at the Guilford High School. We did install the chiller enclosure soundproofing material. So we're hoping that helps resolve the issues with our neighbors over at Long Hill. We will be doing some testing to determine how much noise or how much the noise level was decreased by that installation. Hopefully that drops us below the town regulations and puts us back in within those regulations. So we'll be getting that scheduled up, and we'll report next week how those numbers came in. So long list of projects. Most of them are moving along nicely. We'll knock on wood. We're gearing up for a bunch of hopefully site improvement projects as well, working with the town on a couple and then a few throughout the district. So it will be an extremely busy summer. Any questions about the long list I just threw at everybody? Good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Cliff. Okay. Does anybody have any communications that they need to share with the committee? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second from Mary Best. All in favor? All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you all.
See you at 7:30.
Okay.
And Kevin, can I ask you again to send out the panelist invite so it'll be top of box for everybody?
Yeah, I'll send it out about 7:15.
Super. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.